Okay, the focus of this screencast is the historical background and development of the genre called crime fiction. Along with this screencast, there is an exercise in which you are asked to pay attention to the highlighted words that you'll see during this screencast and arrange them in the three main time periods that this screencast will cover. So pay attention, and here we go. The genre crime fiction starts to develop in the period called the Industrial Revolution. This period starts in the early 1800s, and one of the most significant things to happen is that start to see a lot of technological developments. Production is improved, transportation is improved, and a lot of this is thanks to machines. So farming becomes a lot easier as well. This means that fewer people are needed on farms, so people start to move to the cities in a process called urbanization. When a lot of people live very closely together, there's a chance that crime starts to rise, and this is exactly what we see. And this means that as a response, police forces are established. In London, for example, we see a police force being created in the year 1829. A special criminal investigation department, so-called detective units, are created in 1842. And by the 1880s, they have begun to really become an important factor in fighting crime. We see the same pattern in America, although it is a little later than in Britain. For example, the New York City Police Department is created in 1845. And this is still in the Industrial Revolution. So, society changes. Before, people used to live in small village communities. Everybody knew everybody, and this created stability, safety, very few strangers. But in the big cities, people are always surrounded by strangers, so they feel anonymous, they feel rootless, they don't belong anywhere, really. They feel alienated. And so before, when you could almost be sure who the criminal was because everybody knew everybody, in the big cities there's a lot of uncertainty. Also, people start to earn more money in general, have more spare time, and also generally get a better education. So more people can read, and more people have time for reading when they're not working. So that's the beginning of crime fiction. Develops during this time. As crime starts to grow in the real world, it also starts to have an influence on fiction. Crime fiction grows in popularity. Plots become more complicated, exciting, and the genre starts to give a more accurate portrait of the time period. For example, Sherlock Holmes, the first Holmes story, is published in 1887, and this is the kind of novel that is known as a jigsaw novel. A jigsaw is a kind of puzzle where the crime is investigated by a detective, and the reader is sort of competing with this detective to see if they can solve the crime before the solution is actually revealed. Now we move up to the 1920s and 30s. This is a period known as the Golden Age of crime fiction. Basically, detective stories are more popular than ever before, and some American writers think that this classic jigsaw story has become too unrealistic. Real crimes aren't that complicated. Real crimes don't require this kind of puzzling to solve them. So they want to write about crime in everyday life in America. And this is a time when society is dominated by organized crime and incompetent police. So the individual, the detective, has to take care of things himself. Can't trust the police. And this becomes a kind of story called the hard-boiled detective story. Now, since World War II, the genre has changed a lot. First of all, crime fiction is still one of the most popular kinds of entertainment. But also, the genre is more diverse than it has ever been before. We still see jigsaw stories, we still see hard-boiled stories, but now, for example, we also have courtroom drama, like the TV show Law and Order, where the heroes are both detectives, but also some of the heroes are lawyers. We also see the so-called police procedural, like NCIS or Criminal Minds, where the focus is not so much on the characters, the detectives, but on the cases. This kind of show is also sometimes called Case of the Week, because you don't really need to know what came before. You can just drop in and watch the episode, and that'll work fine on its own. Since World War II, crime fiction has also tackled new issues. For example, the study of criminal psychology, where the point is to understand how the criminal's mind works. For example, FBI's so-called behavioral science unit was created in 1972. And this means that crime fiction includes new characters like psychologists or serial killers. The show Criminal Minds and the show Dexter are examples of what this change has caused in the genre. Also, the genre reacts to scientific progress. For example, forensic DNA analysis was first used in an investigation in 1984. Also, computer forensics in the early 21st century has changed the way crime is investigated. And again, this means that crime fiction includes new heroes, new crimes, scientists, computer nerds, so on. These characters didn't belong in the genre before, at least not in the same way, weren't as central, we could say. So yeah, that was the historical background and development of the crime fiction genre. Please focus on the exercise in the worksheet now.